with a beat there, and then whenever you're ready, Chair, you can
All
proceed.
right. I'd like to call the meeting, Library Commission meeting to order at 6:35 PM. Welcome everyone to the April 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Library Commission. This is a hybrid meeting with commissioners, city staff, and members of the public participating in person at the Menlo Park Library in accordance with public health guidelines for in-person meetings and the public participating remotely. I'd like to do a quick roll call. Commissioner Cohen. Here. Commissioner Herrick.
Here.
Commissioner Horton.
Here.
Commissioner Pollock. Here. Commissioner Wise is, sounds like en route, so we'll hold that. And myself, Commissioner Singh, Vice Chair Commissioner Singh. Staff present include Sean Reinhardt, Library and Community Services Director, and Assistant Library and Community Services Director, Nick Sedgwick. And I believe you would like to introduce a topic that's not.
Yes, both Nick and I would like to introduce a topic. Come on up here. So we did want to take a moment to acknowledge some transitions on the commission, because we do have a couple of commissioners here who's today's their last meeting. Commissioner Cohen, Commissioner Singh.
Always been patient.
Yeah.
Graduating from the
There you go.
commission.
This is
I
your
would
last,
wear clean socks out
this
of
is
here.
Alan, it's your last one?
It's my last one.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were until 26.
No, they're rolling me out of here. They can't get me out of here quick enough. Look at this.
Oh.
They buy me flowers just to get me out of the building.
Say hello, bud.
Oh, yeah, look at this. We're both cycling up?
Yes, yeah.
And Ada too, right?
Oh,
And
my
we're
goodness.
just,
Well,
we're
there you
so
go. Thank
grateful
you.
for your service
Thank
over
you
the
very
past
much.
years.
Really
And we
appreciate
thought
all your help.
in true graduation fashion, we
Thank you.
wanted to make sure you had a lady.
Much appreciated.
Take you off into the sunset. Okay, thanks very much for that.
Please wear it the whole meeting.
Something to look forward to in 6 years, I think.
That's right.
Well, I very much appreciate that, and I'm sure
Yeah.
Commissioner Cohen is deeply appreciative.
Oh, and she's here.
Oh, great. Nick is also the staff liaison for the commission. Nick will be helping facilitate the meeting. Nick, will you please take a moment and provide instructions to the commission and members of the public in attendance on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Vice Chair. For members of the public who are attending this meeting virtually and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, please engage that raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. For those who are calling in from a landline or cell phone, please press *9 to raise your virtual hand. Members of the public attending remotely who wish to speak, please take a moment to make sure your first and last name are updated on Zoom, or you may provide your name and the spelling as you are called to speak. Public comment will be heard in the order received and is limited to 3 minutes in length. For members of the public attending in person, there are speaker cards available on the table behind me to my right. Please complete one and turn it in to me or another staff member before public comment is called for the item you wish to speak on. If there are a large number of public commenters, the time limit may be adjusted by the chair in order to allow everyone a chance to comment. When your turn for online public comment has arrived, staff will unmute you. And a quick note, this is a special meeting, so there is no section for public comment on items not on the agenda. The chair can call for public comment for items on the agenda as they come up. And with that, I'll return the meeting back to the chair.
Great, thank you, Nick, and I'd like to acknowledge that Commissioner Wise is in attendance. Great to see you. We'll be shifting now to item C, regular business. Under regular business, the Library Commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Library Commission approval. With that, we'll shift to approving the joint minutes from the February 28th joint meeting with the Parks and Recreation Commission and the minutes from the March 18th special meeting. Nick, do we have any comments, public comments on this item?
At this time, if you would like to make a public comment on item C1, the approval of the joint meeting minutes from February 28th with the Parks and Recreation Commission and the minutes from the March 18th special meeting, please notify the staff liaison by using that raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in, you can use *9 to engage the raise hand function, and if you're here, please approach and let me have a comment card. And just for the commission's information, we have no attendees currently virtually. See no public commenters coming forward.
All right. So at this time, we'll open it for the commissioners' discussion, and if there is no discussion, we can proceed and see if a commissioner would like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes for both meetings.
Excellent. And do we have a second?
I second.
Second.
Okay, so motion made by Commissioner Cohen and seconded by Commissioner Pollock to approve the joint meeting minutes from February 28th with the Parks and Recreation Commission and the minutes from the March 18th special meeting of the Library Commission. Going to do a roll call vote. Commissioner Cohen, how do you vote?
Approved.
Commissioner Herrick, how do you vote? Approved. Commissioner Orton, how do you vote?
Approved.
Commissioner Pollock, how do you vote?
Approved.
Commissioner Wise, how do you vote? And Vice Chair Singh, how do you vote?
Approved.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay. Shifting now to item C2, selecting new Library Commission Chair and Vice Chair. Nick, over to you.
So the City Council appointed new members to the commission at their meeting last Tuesday, which reminds us that it is time to select a new chair and vice chair for the commission. So as noted in the staff report, the Library Commission follows the same practice that the City Council does, which is to say, vice mayor becomes mayor, so vice chair becomes chair. And then the longest serving member of the body who has not been vice mayor or vice chair or chair becomes vice chair. In our circumstances here, Vice Chair Singh is rotating off of the commission, and so he's not available to become chair. So the longest serving members, both who have not been chair or vice chair, are Commissioner Orton and Commissioner Wise. So I will leave it at that point. I'll stop. That's my presentation. There is no, there's nothing that says that Commissioners Orton and Wise have to be chair and vice chair. That's just the practice we sort of set in place to go along with the way that the City Council chooses chair and vice chair.
Great. So before we open it up to the commissioners to discuss, Nick, do we have any public comment on this item?
At this time, if you would like to make a public comment on item C2, the selection of new Library Commission chair and vice chair, please use that raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in, please press *9 to raise your virtual hand. Or if you're here in the room with us, please fill out a comment card and bring it forward. Seeing no public comments, back to the chair.
Okay, so fellow commissioners, I could open up the floor for discussion, or we could proceed to commissioners making a motion to select a chair and vice chair.
No pressure.
Yeah, I have no preference. I'm very happy to be vice chair.
I'm happy to do either. I was gonna take aside Commissioner Wise before to say, do you have a preference? And we could flip a coin. We could do it by age or beauty.
I
Rock,
truly
rock,
have no
paper, scissors, I think has served many well.
Did you both start at the same time?
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Surprising, we're already the longest. So
Be
I feel
careful
like
what
it
you
was
wish for.
just yesterday we joined. No, I'm truly happy to be vice chair. I really have no preference.
Either
And if any of the commissioners have any questions for the staff about what the roles entails, or for your fellow commissioners who have served as chair and vice chair, they can kind of fill you in as well. But we won't sort of leave you out on a ledge by yourself as chair and vice chair. The staff are here to assist.
Yeah, and I actually had a thought about that. I was just sort of working through the fact that I just had a tour with her last month as newer commissioner to the library, and
Well, I have been
on
on
the
for a while,
floor,
but I
yeah.
just haven't done the
But-
backstage tour.
I think you must have come on a year before me, right,
Mhm.
last year?
Yeah,
So I think it would be great if once whichever person becomes the chair and they're gonna get on board in a certain way in May probably. If we could in June, maybe sort of discuss among the commission how the chair role has worked and is working, because I have a lot of questions about how we actually advise the city council. I know a lot of, with the pandemic and there's been a lot of disruption, we have a new sort of a combined department, and everything. So I think it'd be great if maybe in June or July on an agenda item where we just the new chair talks about her experience getting onboarded, and then would help those of us who might come up in future years know what to expect,
That's a great.
how the
Good
chair role
idea.
works.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
If you also don't really know what it entails beyond being our speaker, so yeah, that would be.
Let's see,
Sorry.
I'm not sure if. Like the previous, report that's like referenced here from March, I think it goes into a little more detail what the chair does. Obviously, they run the meetings, and the vice chair would run in the chair's absence with which vice chair Singh has been doing. Another significant role is once per year presenting to the city council the like the commission's work of the year prior, which would be coming up, I think in August. It's coming up.
It's on our calendar. And
Yes.
so you would present, it's a fairly standard report out on the work that the commission's done in the previous year. It kind of goes hand in hand with the work that the commission will do on devising a work plan for the coming year. So you sort of, here's what we did, here's what we're gonna do, kind of report out to the city council. I have examples of previous years' report outs.
And is that a
to look at.
report that's given in writing and you're just there to answer questions, or is it an oral report as well?
You could make it as elaborate or as plain as you would like. Some people like to.
Musical accompaniment?
Some people like to engage the council kind of in a conversation, and so they have a lot more slides and they want to sort of talk to them about the things that are going on in the library. Some other chairs have been sort of presenting it as here it is, and here's a couple of slides with what we were going to do, and here's what we did. And do you have any questions? So it can be as elaborate or as simple as you would like. They just like to hear from the various commissions what they're doing and what issues they might feel they need to address.
What's the timing of that?
It has to be done by the middle of September.
Oh,
So there's time still to work on the work plan and kind of look back over the year and what the previous work plan contained and how we did or didn't do with that work plan.
Just some pretty good stuff to report this year.
Yeah.
Opening the library next month.
Yeah.
Actually, on that note, I very sadly will be out of town for that opening, so if that, yeah, makes a difference, it might be better.
I'm also out of town.
Oh my gosh, we're doing
I
great.
didn't know it was that weekend, so.
But that doesn't really factor
That's-
into the
There's lots
reporting
of
out to
other
the council
people
or
who
chair.
will be there at
Yeah.
the opening.
I was just wondering.
It's a party.
Forever. but-
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you may not get the scepter and the cane, and you probably won't get the crown now. You may get the parking spot, you'll get that preferential spot.
So it looks like it's August 13th that we report out to the city council, and that's on our July agenda.
Right.
That's where it's at right now, yes. And then whatever else the chair, with the commission's sort of support and consent, is called upon to do or the commission chooses to do over the course of the year. It's not limited to the things I described, but those are some of the fundamentals.
And the chair has also usually meets with staff in advance of this meeting, not always, but usually to sort of go over the agenda and what items are coming up that we've been sort of setting up on the agenda calendar, which we'll talk about, well, we're ready for this one, we're not ready for that one, kinds of things, and sort of help preview the agenda with the staff.
Okay.
Great.
So, do we have a motion?
I can motion.
So it's, yeah.
Commissioner
it sounds
Gordon
like-
as chair,
sounds like-
Commissioner Wise as vice chair.
Excellent.
Yeah, it
Do we
looks
have
like we have a chair and a co-chair,
yes, do we have a
or
second?
vice chair.
Vice chair.
vice chair, sorry.
So we have a motion on the floor for Commissioner Horton as chair and Commissioner Wise as vice chair. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Second. Nick,
All right, let me
over to you.
do my roll call vote. So the motion on the floor is to select Commissioner Orton as the new chair and Commissioner Wise to serve as vice chair. Commissioner Cohen, how do you vote?
Yes, support and support. I suppose that's how-
Commissioner Herrick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Orton, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollak, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Singh, how do you vote?
I vote in favor.
And Commissioner Wise, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Congratulations.
There you go. Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
So sort of next steps, Commissioner Orton, I'll reach out to you and we'll find a time that works for you to meet with us in advance of the agenda setting for the next meeting. You know, a lot of the sort of pre-work of kind of teeing things up we do with the agenda calendar review, but maybe there's something comes up or there's something we have some questions about. And that's true about any of the commissioners. You can always reach out to us with questions.
Great.
But I'll reach out to you.
Great.
Excellent. Moving on to item C3. Recommending the Library and Community Services Department Strategic Plan for 2024 to 2026. Nick, would you like to introduce this item and recap the process of updating the strategic plan?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Chair Singh. We brought, the strategic plan has been a document that we created back in 2020 and then revised again in the middle of the pandemic. Now revising again, coming out of the pandemic and looking towards opening our new joint use facility. So we worked with the staff and with both the library and the Parks and Rec commissions to kind of draft updates to the strategic plan and brought them to both commissions back in January. We've taken the edits that were suggested and after that review, reincorporated back in. There weren't major changes from the version that you saw in January. Do you want to highlight anything that was changed?
Just noted, as noted in the report, we were proposing to extend the overall time frame to 2 years, 24 to 26. There were some start dates in goal 2.2 about the Bellhaven Community Campus that were a little out of date, so we know when it's opening now, so we just kind of fixed those. And then maybe the most significant ones are to add to the strategic planning goals to conduct a review of the Parks and Recreation Facilities master plan at least every 2 years. And that's something the PRC did earlier this year, where they kind of updated the master plan and said, let's do it every 2 years. So we've added that. And then we have elevated to achieve accreditation for our department programs over the next 2 years. And as listed in the staff report, both on the recreation side, the childcare and the library side, now that the new facility project is nearing completion, we're kind of focusing on accreditation as being our next multi-year project.
And then, you know, our focus as staff will be on gathering feedback from the community on the programs and the facilities that we're opening in the Bellhaven neighborhood. We'll continue to operate all of the programs that we operate here. It's just that that's going to be the focus because we haven't heard from that. We heard from that community while we were planning and building, and now we're going to actually be producing, and we want to hear back from them about how we're doing in our first shot at that. That's what I have. I'm able to pull this up on the screen if you want to go through or look at a particular section, happy to do that. But that's the presentation that we have.
Excellent. So while commissioners think that over, do we have any public comment on this topic?
Thank you, Chair. At this time, if you would like to make a public comment on item C3, recommend the Library and Community Services Department Strategic Plan 2024 to 26. Please use that raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in, you can use *9 to engage the raise hand function. And if you would like to make a comment in person, please fill out a card and bring it forward. And seeing no comment.
Okay, I'd like to open this up for commissioners' discussion. Does anyone have any comments or questions? For Nick and Sean?
Comment. I think you've done a lot of work. I'm still trying to get up to speed on how much. And I think this sort of 2 years, every 2 years that you've implemented with the Parks and Recreation Commission is maybe something we can eventually try to emulate on Library Commission. And the only thought I had reading through this, a lot of it was on the train today, I have to admit. I noticed that you do, because there was a department sort of joining during the pandemic, which I haven't gotten my head around quite yet, but I did notice you're doing some staff cross-training and trying to gain efficiencies there. I'm wondering if for the advisory bodies, there also couldn't be by the end of this calendar year, some way in which 2 commissions are sort of advising about one department. And so sometimes when I read through the strategic plan, of like, am I keeping track of this, or do I care about that, or is that another commission? And so I think that would help, again, just to sort of educate us. And I'm sure it's been hard for you guys to figure out over the last couple of years, but.
Yeah, it's a
who's
good
coming
point,
from where.
because I think there are some areas, as you see in the joint meetings, where the concerns of the 2 commissions do overlap. And then there are some where they don't. I don't want to say pickleball is necessarily not of interest to the Library Commission, but it would be things like that. You know, to the extent that both teams and both commissions sort of oversee areas that have to do with public programming, I think there's a lot of overlap there. And to the extent that that the different teams in the department and the different commissions are both interested in lifelong learning, because we have a childcare division in the department, and that's the library team does a lot of collaboration with the childcare team. Things like that, I think, would be of interest to both. And you can see we brought an informational report on the childcare, some childcare updates to the Library Commission this month. So, but I agree, we can look for, I don't know what that would look like really, but we can work on
Yeah,
that.
I think the most prominent physical manifestation of it is the new Bellhaven Community Campus, because the library, youth center, and all the other functions are co-located there. And so the 2 commissions, we are planning to meet jointly next month to really talk about that center. So, you know, it's wherever we see that kind of overlap taking place, but there's still a need for, you know, very library specific discussion and support on the Library Commission side, and kind of recreation specific support for, you know, those details, like pickleball, for example. It's just a fun word to say.
Disappointingly does not include pickles.
No, yeah.
Pickles involved.
So I think sort of getting to like your previous point about, I'm not suggesting that it's like, oh, there's just overlap and, you know, maybe we should, you know, necessarily merge the 2 commissions, but in our work effort over the coming year, you know, how do we, oh, we're taking the lead on this, the other commission is taking the lead on this thing, we should spend our efforts as a commission on these priorities, and then check in with the other commission, okay, do these align with your priorities? Is there a Venn diagram that we're working on, or do we take the lead on one versus the other? And just in general, it's kind of helpful to understand, you know, where our efforts or interests could be focused over the coming year as a commission in our own right, and then sync up with the Parks and Recs Commission for, you know, joint priorities, and then where they would take the lead versus where we would take the lead.
Yeah, it's interesting. So coming up in the next couple of months, and get to this at the tentative agenda, is developing the commission's work plan for the coming year. I think it's coming up in June and July. And so that there's, I think, a great opportunity, maybe the two commissions sort of comparing notes during that process so that the two work plans, do have a little bit more of that alignment and very specifically identifying, here's where we overlap and here's where we kind of don't, like the Venn diagram.
Mhm.
So if that, I see some heads nodding, like, it seems like maybe a
Yeah.
way
I
to
don't
go about
remember
it.
there being much, I mean, in all fairness, I don't remember there being much in the way of true overlap. I mean, the Parks and Rec group kind of dealt with, guess what, Parks and Rec,
Mhm.
and we kind of dealt with library things, and so it really, David, my impression is that we kind of got smushed together sort of post-pandemic,
Mhm.
and so it's not an exhaustive number of years, but in the 2 or 3 years that it's been merged together, I don't recall there even being one instance where I got a feeling that we were working on something and someone was working on it in the other commission redundantly, and there was it just, I mean. you
Yeah,
got to
I didn't
The
need to
only
use
thing
those
we-
terms.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, it turns out that I think it's two commissions that are serving the community.
Right.
But in very different aspects, and it just so happens that they fall under your rubric. But I
Yeah.
don't recall there being much in the way of, so I.
Wasn't
really
the,
turned
the
out to
main
be-
one that we had in common was what to name the building?
Right, that was about, that was it.
We all know how that went.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, let's not go there.
but now, it does seem like they're kind of separate agendas, but you'll be able, I mean, this.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
maybe I'm
there's
We
some
should talk about
good points here, and I think a lot of it does kind of where a lot of the crossover takes place is where the rubber hits the road with the programs and the classes and the activities. And the new building, I think, provides more of that kind of synergy, and I think it's designed to do that. So like the maker space comes to mind, right? Which is kind of, there's arts and crafts, it has technology, it's a place for the senior center folks to, do traditional arts and crafts or sewing, or even learn more technology. For the youth center, which is the school age childcare, they use that space as well. And for our staff in particular, it's like, well, we need to have cross training among the different divisions where the staff are able to sort of pivot between these different user groups, some of whom are really kind of coming at it from maybe a library perspective, literally walking through the library to get there, and others are kind of coming at it from a recreation perspective, for example, by registering to take a class for which there's a user fee, like coding for kids, or taking the like a summer camp, like we have several summer day camps, which are typically, they're run by the recreation side of the house. But, a lot of that is summer learning. And so we now have a facility that provides a platform to do more of that. So I do think there'll be more of that kind of detailed discussion, and it's a little bit more will be operationally focused, whereas up to now it's been very much taken up with
Mhm.
preparing for the new facility.
But like, Alan, to your point, I don't mean to suggest that there's like overlap or stepping on
Yeah.
toes or the potential for that. I would just like one example that, again, not to make it into anything, but like Nick, you were telling me about like the upcoming like bicycle, like corral and repair and, festivities that are around the library, is sort of sponsoring that program. When I was in San Carlos, that was kind of a Parks and Rec kind of thing. But like you were saying, where the rubber meets the road in terms of community programming, some of the community programming is going to come initiated from the library side. Others are going to come from the other side. And so I think there will be more synergies moving forward if we're looking at, community programs in general.
Agreed. So, and this actually is a timely conversation since the two commissions will be meeting jointly next month, primarily around the new facility, but it's exactly these
Mhm.
kinds of topics that we'd like to discuss with the commissions. and maybe that's a good opportunity to talk
Maybe
about, hey,
that's,
what's the
maybe
roadmap?
could you
What's it look like?
agendize
Yeah.
that as just a free discussion,
Yeah,
between the two commissions on working together?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Would a commissioner like to make a motion to recommend the LCS Department Strategic Plan?
I move to, recommend the Community Services Department Strategic Plan for 24-26.
Great. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Nick?
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Orton and seconded by Commissioner Wise to recommend the Library and Community Services Department Strategic Plan 2024-26. Commissioner Cohen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Herrick, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Orton, how do you vote?
Yes,
Commissioner Pollock, how do you vote?
Yes,
Commissioner Wise, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Singh, how do you vote?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, shifting forward to item D, informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the Library Commission in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items.
So I have a note there in your chair notes, Vice Chair Singh, about whether you wanted to consider taking public comment on all 5 of these at the same time, or do you want to break them out one by one? I guess it really depends on what the commission would like. Do you have questions, or would you like to sort of break one of these out and talk about them a little bit? They are informational items in that there's no action for you to take on any of these. We bring them forward to you informationally so that you're aware of them. But if you have any questions or comments on anything, happy to discuss them.
So maybe one question before we move forward.
Yeah.
These presentations you'll provide, can we ask questions as you're delivering the presentation, or?
They're going to be pretty brief. They'll be more like introductions than presentations to the items. Basically, just a quick recap about what it is and why we thought it might be of interest to you. But then, yeah, you can ask questions at any point in there about
No,
them.
that's great. So maybe what I'll do is I'll use the vice chair's prerogative and have you guys present the whole thing. And then we can open up for public comment on all of them, and then we can have the commissioner discussion on all of them.
That sounds good to me.
So over to you.
Okay, so a quick run through. Item D1 is an item about onboarding new commission members, which we're kind of a month early, but that's okay. We're out ahead of it. It basically has a bunch of links that might be useful to oncoming commission members. Past commissions have paired up incoming new commissioners with a current serving commissioner, just as sort of a buddy system. I don't know that, it's not like you're drowning or anything, but just to have somebody to talk to other than a staff member about any issues or questions you might have. Item B2, we recently provided an update to the city council on the status of our city-run childcare and early childhood education programs. And it's basically talking about where we were pre-pandemic, the impacts of the pandemic, and where we think we might be going after the pandemic. It's setting up a study session with the city council where we will ask for their discussion and direction on some ideas that we have going forward, and that will take place in August. D3 is just an update item on the Bellhaven Community Campus, kind of getting ready to open, but a lot of the little things that were going on, the setting up of the mini session of courses that are going to be available for hyperlocal residents starting Saturday registration, the grand opening, some updates on the furniture and things like that that are coming in. The department updates has statistics and updates from the department. Last time you guys had asked for a little more detail on e-resources, so we broke those out and gave you a little more information on that. Happy to hear feedback if that's too much or not enough, or you want to go this way. And then the tentative agenda calendar, which we can look at maybe after we do public comment and discussion.
Great, so why don't we see if there's any public comment before we move to discussion?
At this time, if anyone would like to make a public comment on item D1, onboarding new commission members, D2, the update on city-run childcare programs, D3, updates on the Bellhaven Community Campus startup activities, D4, the Library and Community Services Department updates, or D5, the Library Commission tentative agenda calendar, please use that raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in, *9 to raise your hand. And if you're here in person, please fill out a comment card and bring it forward. And seeing no comments, back to you, Vice Chair.
I'd like to open it up to the commissioners. Any questions or comments on any of the above?
I have a comment and a question on the new library commissioner onboarding.
Sure.
I think that these links are the same ones that were provided to us a year ago when we started, correct? So.
They're similar, yeah.
They're si-
I might
or
have
maybe they're
stuck
updated
in one or
versions.
two, yeah, that
Okay,
are
it
different.
looks,
But they are mostly the same, correct?
and so this is just to remind us about these links and for those who are joining to provide
Absolutely.
them to them.
Yep.
And then my second question is about the organizations, the links to the different organizations that are affiliated with us. And not everyone was here when we had this discussion in the winter, I think in November, December, about in the past, we've had somebody assigned, a commissioner assigned as a rep to each affiliate, and we had a discussion, well, do we really want to do that, or would we rather invite them to give a presentation, or is that too much pressure? And I'm not sure where we ended up. It feels like it kind of went out there. So I would just like to say that I think, from my perspective, it would be very helpful to have somebody attending and observing at least the Friends of the Library and the Menlo Park Library Foundation. I'm not sure whether the Historical Association that's necessary. Maybe they'd rather come give. And I think the literary partners maybe falls in a slightly different category, but at least those two organizations, I think it would be helpful. I'd be willing to be a contact person for one of them. But you know, that's just me. I'm gonna hear what other people have to say, but I do think it would be helpful to, like at the end of our meetings, when we say commissioners report out on their, just to have a feel for what goes on, because I know just from reading the updates from, that I get from the city, about activities that the Library Foundation is funding some wonderful artistic and musical things that are going on at the libraries. And I think it just would be nice for us to have more of a, on the pulse of what's going on. And
Yeah, I'll just weigh in on what you just said, Carol. There was a time before these meetings were broadcast via Zoom or whatever the platform is, where there'd actually be rows of people sitting here that decide to tell. There would be people here and there would be representation, not infrequently from the Historical Society and the Friends of the Library and the Foundation. So guess what would happen? Exactly what you'd imagine. They ask a question and the next thing you know, they're getting an opportunity to talk about what they're doing. And it was a little bit more involved and a little bit more engaged and collaborative, my opinion only. And then at one point, we started attending those meetings. The only challenge you'll find is that some of these meetings are at times of the day that, depending upon your work schedule and your other commitments, not so easy.
I understand.
Middle of the day, during the weeks, not something that now where a lot of us are working from home, we're doing it differently, but it wasn't easy to do. What's missing now, personally, I think, is these meetings actually serve as a recurring perpetual opportunity for a recording to endure. That if people actually want to, and they can't call in tonight or they can't attend, can actually see it again, right?
Mhm.
You can pull it up and listen to it. And I think it's an opportunity for a lot of these organizations doing very good work. To have a platform where they have another opportunity to be seen and heard. So even though it might be a once a year kind of thing to come to the meeting and, so, you know, people don't always like to make slides and publicly speak. The fact of the matter is that it's a very powerful and useful opportunity to understand, like, even just something as simple as the Friends versus the Foundation. I bet you most people don't have a clue what either of those organizations are, and if it wasn't for them, this library would have hundreds of thousands of dollars less money every year
Hmm.
to spend on books, let alone art events and things. So I'm completely with you.
I'm completely with you. I'm saying let's do both.
Yeah, I think
Encourage
you're
them to
right.
participate
Yeah.
and have it go both, but I think we could benefit and do a better job at what we're assigned to do if we
Agreed.
have more interaction with them. So I think both of those would be great to reignite.
No, I was gonna say, I met the president of the Menlo Park Library Foundation, I think at the city council meeting we were at next, so
Yep.
I would be happy to reach out to her, and again, I do think their meetings.
They're at
Last
2
time I
o'clock
checked were
on
like, yeah,
Thursdays.
2 o'clock on, oh.
Thursday.
So let's
Yeah,
talk
I-
about that,
I-
because I could go to that, and I know some of the people on that. Pardon, yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
I'm-
And
I-
the historical society, as I recall, meets sort of early, also during the day.
They meet like 2 or 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I
Here.
went to a few of those and I went to some historical society meetings and Friends of the Library meetings, and this was sort of peri-pandemic, so it was challenging and people were concerned about exposing one another, so there were special circumstances, but
I do-
I think
yeah.
I agree with you.
At least reach out and talk. I know Katie Hadrovich, who's off the board now, but was on the commission for a long time, was actually on the board of the Library Foundation, which is not really what I'm suggesting to me. It seems like more of a, as a representative, as a,
Yes.
not to actually be a board member. You know, it's like 2 separate hats.
And if I could, just, this is a great conversation, I would just say, it doesn't necessarily need to take the form of attending their meetings. It could take the form of just reaching out to like the
Right,
president or the treasurer or whoever, and just
Have
sort of
coffee.
having,
Mhm.
Yeah.
maybe it is once a month or like on the
Yeah, yeah.
cadence of these meetings. Hey, what's going on over at the Friends, what's going on over at the Foundation? And then you could report out, and then, you know, there, that connection is there to invite them to come. I'll give a little bit of sort of historical background is that, I think those groups, they have kind of an independent streak, you know, they're nonprofit organizations, they all work hard. And so then when it's like, why don't you come to the Library Commission and present? And their answer has been in the past, well, you should come present to us. So maybe keeping it more of the like, well, we just want to check and see how you're doing, and there's less obligation there.
Wait, so you're saying that the library commission can't say you must be.
There are no subpoena powers. of the commission.
You do have the gavel. so-
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's
But I
right.
Is there a
think,
jail on the basement?
Good point.
yeah,
I think Sean raises a good point, just because in this strategic plan, it sounds like I saw an actual targeted percentage goal on volunteerism and everything, and I think that maybe was within the, I don't know, right? I have questions about the fact that those are all volunteer. Do they count? Oh, do we need to? Yeah, exactly. And so should we know, like she's saying, should we know about that activity a little bit better in order to evaluate? Yes, definitely. Meeting.
And that percentage number that was in there, was that referring to these 2 organizations, that 3%
all
target?
all volunteers, so, you know,
Are
any
there other
volunteer that's
volunteers that-
contributing toward, you know, the library's goals.
There are.
There are
There's
2
other
organized groups that do
Okay.
that, but we also do, like, you know, folks who walk in and want to volunteer, and we'll, you know, put them in.
And we have a couple of teen advisory groups that
Okay.
we consider volunteers. They work at some events and do some other volunteer work for the library.
Got
So
Little
it's,
spitballing on that, what everyone has kind of said. And I was thinking, oh, there's like, an agenda item for like individual commissioner reporting out. one thought, and be careful what you suggest, because then I have to take on the responsibility myself, but like, if each commissioner has informally says, oh, okay, I'm gonna be liaison to this group. And whether it means just having coffee with them, reporting out, or visiting one of their meetings, or they visit one of our meetings. Like I was thinking, oh, I'd like to be more of a liaison with like area, like high schools and their, makerspace, and like, some initiatives at the schools that could be with the library, moving forward. Or, with the Silicon Valley, bicycle coalition, that there's some sort of, two-way communication on future, programming or something. And each commissioner says, oh, okay, hey, I'm gonna reach out, to this group or that group, and then kind of report out on a informal, irregular basis at commission meetings, in that agenda item at the end.
Yeah.
Might
So
cover that.
I think once upon a time that did happen.
Okay.
At the outset of my tenure,
Uh,
during that last section,
mhm,
the
Right.
veterans of the library commission who had been on multiple terms would report out from their participation in these various groups. But I think COVID sort of curtailed that, and so if you want to resuscitate that, I think that is
Definitely.
a welcome.
mhm.
And it's something that we could agendize for, if not May, then June's meeting, and we could talk about it, and if you wanted to divvy it up about who wants to do what,
It looks like it's already on the June agenda.
well, there you go.
Designate commission
Someone's looking
liaisons to
ahead.
library infinity book.
Oh,
How
Yeah,
personal are you?
There is kind of a cadence to it,
Okay.
well,
Well,
because it
can't do
comes
it
after,
next, you can't do it next month because we're Parks and Rec.
and it also
Mhm.
comes after, a month after that any new commissioners might be seated, so there's sort of a time where you kind of
Oh,
reassess that.
We're librarians, we keep everything and then we bring it back out the following year and
It is-
dust
it
it off.
is.
Yeah.
So if I could make a comment / question on the statistics attachment. Insofar as it's possible, I think what you've done in terms of showing month to month for the last year and a half or so is great. For the things that have this kind of relevance, adding the budget that was associated with those things would also be interesting. Because from my perspective, it's really how efficient are we spending the money? Are we getting attendees to this thing? How much are we spending per attendee? Should we think about reallocating dollars based on that? And so I know not all of these activities could lend itself to that analysis, but there are several on here where you can start to understand, are our programs achieving the bang for the buck?
Yeah, that's fair. And I think with some of the analysis that we did on the other side of the house, where we were looking at community-wide events, we kind of did that analysis where we were like, okay, for the 4th of July event, for the egg hunt, how much money does it cost us to put on these larger events? For many of the events that we do that are smaller, where we're bringing in an outside presenter or performer, those are supported by the Friends of the Library organization. So other than the staff time that it takes, and it does take staff time to coordinate those events, make sure everybody gets paid to set it up, to clean it up. So there is even in those events where we're being supported by one of our partner organizations, there is a cost associated with it.
And I think following that, sort of jumping back to the city-run childcare programs, I know that the budget aspect is really the purview of the council, but I feel like we need to listen, advise, inform, interact with you guys. And I guess I'm not sure, you mentioned that there's gonna be a study session on the council for that in August,
That's correct.
but we've been asked to become informed, become aware. Are we having a study session as well? I see something on the June agenda, but I don't think it's a study session. That's a parent survey, or should we be preparing for that as a study session separate from the council? I guess that's one of the things I'm a little confused about. Should we be engaging pre-council, or what's the ask? I
Yeah,
guess?
thank you. I mean, it really is, like the city council study session, and it really does get, the purpose is for the city council to give staff direction, like where do we go with the childcare and early childhood education programs from here? But they would benefit greatly with the library commission being the most education adjacent of the commissions. To at least like have an awareness of the issues here and to be able to provide some input to the city council. So when we come back in June, the main thing I think we wanted to focus on is to do a survey of Menlo Park parents, because the countywide survey, we felt like the data was a little lacking. There just weren't enough parents in it. So at a minimum, we thought we'd bring the survey to the library commission before it goes out. So you can kind of have a look at it, say, does this look right? Is this asking the right questions? Are there any other aspects of this that are tied to like education in particular that we, kind of want to inform the survey with? And any other kind of wherever the conversation kind of may go from there, and we give that information to the city council. The library commission had a discussion. Here's some takeaways from that discussion. Here's some recommendations that they might have.
Okay, so we should sort of prepare for the June meeting for that, because I mean, I have
Yeah.
thoughts, experience, ideas.
Yeah, I think, we'll provide like a staff report as well to kind of, give you some of that information, but as any advanced thoughts would be really welcome as well. Yeah.
On that, on the early, or the childcare program, is there like a working committee? Because I know that there are a number of countywide activists who are residents of Menlo Park. There's at the county level, there's like Four Cs, et cetera, First Five, Big Lift, et cetera. There's, funding and grants, for this kind of thing. Is that being worked on at the staff level right now, or is there like a working group of people who are super knowledgeable about these things?
Yeah, primarily it's the staff at this point in time, and we do have connections with like the County Office of Education, Four Cs, the other center-based childcares in Menlo Park, which they're mentioned in the report. So we kind of have that professional sort of cadre sort of engaged. The community element, there really isn't any other kind of vehicle right now. Our childcare centers, we do have like meetings with the parents and things like that, but it's not formalized in a way that kind of enters this public discussion. And so that's where we're kind of bringing this information to the library commission, because it is a public venue and forum with literally recordings of the proceedings as well as the written material. And so we're kind of thinking that's an opportunity for folks who want to engage, through the advisory body process, that the library commission would be the platform for that.
Is there a role for the local school districts? Because in some school districts in the county, we have some extra classrooms because the student population has gone down, so we can rent out, and secure space at unfavorable terms, and or some of their an extension of their pre-K or whatever TK programs. Like, has there been a dialogue there?
Yeah, and I think the dialogue really at like the K through 12 public schools is really about how they are moving into the transitional kindergarten. And that's at the state level, and it's beginning to kind of land at the local level. So that's kind of where their focus is the 4-year-olds.
Okay.
And so it's like a pre-kindergarten, but they really are limiting it to that. I don't know if any in Menlo Park have preschools on site, they typically don't operate those directly. It's just not
Mhm.
part of the, kind of the charge. Some of the private schools may have that, but we're really kind of focusing in on the K through 12, like the public schools and that transitional kindergarten element. So that's where the engagement kind of is. And I don't want to say, we're not like competing for the same children. The point is for children to get what they need to. Whether we provide it or the school district provides it, that's immaterial, but during that transition, we just. Obviously, things are changing and we have to sort of adapt to that. But the younger, I'm not hearing that the school districts have
Because
a
it
big
just
role
goes
in
on
the younger children.
But they do, I mean, Laurel does have a program that I
Yeah.
think is affecting, and they're talking about even going down to 2. And I'm finding, I don't know that early childhood education in Menlo Park is like our American healthcare system, but I think there's a fair amount of stuff. And I know it's really difficult probably to work with the Menlo Park City School District, which includes Atherton and everything else, but I think there could be something to that in terms of just how much is changing because of the pandemic, which you've captured in the report, plus a pretty micro market that I've just been, I just happen to have been in the last 2 years. I've discovered a lot about it.
The other complicating factor, though, is that the Menlo Park Library is one jurisdiction, and then
Exactly.
within Menlo Park, there are
Mhm.
maybe, three
Three.
different school districts?
Yep.
There's Los Alamitos, there's Menlo Park City School
Mhm.
District, there's,
Yeah.
I mean, so. And the funding mechanisms for all of them, and having a former school board member in Menlo Park, they have to
Mhm.
say,
Yeah.
you know.
So I'm not suggesting it's easy. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
there is something.
There
to
are
it.
opportunities.
It's complex,
And-
there
yeah.
could be.
And everyone's reaching for the same pot of money in some
Mm.
cases, no?
Depends.
That's the money, but more like, well, the children in the community and where,
Okay.
where do parents choose to place their children in those environments, whether it's center-based care or whether it's, more like private, other arrangements, or whether it's just like at-home caregivers. That's
Mhm.
really sort of the crux of this particular item, because we're seeing the effects, in particular at Menlo Children's Center across the way where, it's just the enrollment's kind of hit a plateau and hasn't really moved. And with TK now becoming pretty much the norm, at least it seems to be trending that way. That's the discussion. What are some of the different pivots that the
Mhm.
Menlo Children's Center should make, whether it's younger children or looking more toward the subsidized type care for low-income families or some other model. That's kind of where we're at. And there are different sort of funding streams attached to that. Certainly partnering with school districts is another one of the possible options. So it's kind of early days in the discussion. But that's kind of really the crux of the whole matter.
And the aftercare programs, so the school-aged childcare programs here at MCC and over at the Bellhaven Youth Center work quite closely with the local schools because they're going and picking up the children directly from the school and taking them to the aftercare programs. So there is, it's not like we are not already working with them in some degree. It's just not maybe as well integrated as it could be given the needs of the community. So that's why the survey is important. What do you need? When do you need it? How do you need it? Kind of things to see if we'd be able to provide that sort of care.
And it's helpful now that we're having the further discussion. It sounded like it was at a more at a later stage in the process, but it sounds like it's a very early information gathering, surveying stage, so that's totally fair.
Yeah, so we will bring that back in June and had a pretty robust discussion here, but we'll have a more robust discussion maybe as we have some more information about that survey. Okay, let me, if I may, bring up the tentative agenda calendar here.
Can I just ask one little question
Oh,
about
sure.
Bellhaven opening?
Yeah.
I know that the big opening party is on the 18th. I think there'd been some mention of possible tours before then, before it officially opens. Is that a possibility or is that too distracting?
It's not too distracting. We got the grand opening announcement out over the weekend, and now we are looking to like the sneak preview tours, and we're kind of looking at the week or two before opening, organizing a few of those.
Okay.
We're still putting some furnishings in place,
Yeah, yeah.
and right now the staff is really focused on like moving
Mhm.
over the senior center, the youth center, and the Bellhaven Library. We think by that first week or two of May, we be in a position to do some tours. Before the grand opening.
It looks great, by the way.
I know, very excited to see
It
it.
looks great.
Yeah.
So turning to the tentative agenda calendar, which is up on the screen here. That you see that there's not a whole lot there at the BHCC, except I'm sure there will be a tour component to that, or there could be a tour component to that after adjournment, or even before, depending on how we decide to schedule it. And then some discussion perhaps about how the two commissions can work together, especially concerning BHCC operations. But happy to hear any other suggestions for additions to this agenda calendar.
Well, I'd mentioned in June, I think that update to the LC work plan combined with what you learned, like it's the chair onboarding and figure out how we sort of organize ourselves would be great. I've heard a theme of coming out of the pandemic still, or pre and post, and sort of rebuilding something. I had a sort of further down the page, I was wondering, it looked like there's some empty months in October, November, and I wanted to throw out there that the strategic planning process becoming sort of on the Parks and Recreation side, you got through this master plan and 2-year review. I feel like you've got momentum here that I would love to put pencil in, to add it, but like in October, November, sort of intentional discussion of how we prepare ourselves for the next study session. Or, I noticed you guys set yourself a lot of goals that have already we've reached the date of June and we've just gotten around to recommending the plan, and sort of just looking at the long game of that and just having an intentional discussion as a commission would be great. There's no rush to it, but long enough in advance of the next time you come to us with the updated.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, that's one of the greatest dangers that I see about strategic planning is that yay, we did it. And then you don't talk about it again until it's time to update the plan again. So yeah, I like the idea of bringing it back every 4 or 5 months, just to check in and see if things are still.
On that topic, maybe a focus area that could be part of that discussion is the accreditation process. In the library world, public library, there isn't really necessarily like an American Library Association accreditation, but there is, Library Journal does like the Star Libraries kind of program, which it's kind of like accreditation, and that there's very much like a number of different check boxes that you kind of have to tick off, and sort of standards that you have to meet. And that could be kind of a helpful element, and that's about the time that we would like to kind of take that up at the library. So maybe we could kind of talk about those two things together. Like how does the strategic plan kind of lend to the Star Library designation and vice versa?
Yeah, and I think it was mentioned that it's in August or September, that there's the work plan coming from the city council as well. That'll help so many of us who are new to understand the rhythm of the year and just sort of check in at a low sort of activity time, just talk about the cycle again.
And that Star Library process also has a lot of good comparative data. So you can look at the libraries of our size, of our budget level in California or the West, and kind of compare how we're doing based on those criteria that they measure. Now, they have to quantify it somehow. So there's going to be stuff that they can't measure. It doesn't mean that you're not serving the community or a healthy organization if you're not a Star Library.
What's the timeline for that, for working on getting that designation?
They base it on the statistics that we report up to the state library. So the state library asks us every year, in November, I think is the deadline, for a raft of sticky things.
I think incoming chair, Wilkins, comment, the question was about how long does the accreditation process take?
Well, is this something like becoming a star school? Is this something you apply for, or do they just collect the data? I mean, how do you get that designation?
There is a
With the
process
American
that you go through with them to demonstrate that you've met the different criteria, and then they would include the libraries that meet the criteria in the listing.
And so my question is, when do you submit that? When is that information due to the American Library Association?
It's Library Journal,
Or
and
Library Journal?
don't have it at the top of my head. It's once per year that they do it. So overall, we'd look at it being like a 2-year process.
Could you agendize when you're able to, no hurry, but when you're able to collect the information, do a presentation to the commission on what the process is and the timing and what are the points that need to be covered and so.
Yeah, we were kind of thinking fall would be that time frame. So I'm glad Commissioner Parrick kind of brought up the general topic, so that we could kind of talk through like placement on the,
But I know it's in the strategic plan,
yes.
so, well, I don't remember what the dates were that you put for that.
It was like a 2-year time frame.
Yeah,
Get it done within 2 years, basically.
The library will be closing in 1 minute. If you have anything you'd like to check out, please bring it to the front now. Restrooms will be closed in 10 minutes. Thank you for your attention.
I don't know if this is, maybe it's along the lines of, what Commissioner Henrik is like getting at, but like city councils, like they have a working meeting where it's, it's discussing strategic priorities for the coming year, and we don't have to call out a special meeting for that, but it's just this free discussion. I mean, where, like, I think of things as I'm hearing, our discussion this evening and in the last commission meeting, and it's nice to have a freer flow of, oh, this is what we did pre-pandemic, and this is, what it's worked in the past in terms of liaisoning, with other groups, and so where it's not as structured, and the timing is, we have a other agenda to get through, and instead, have a little bit more time to just discuss, things more in general terms. That would be really great.
Sounds like a study session on goal setting and work plans for the library.
Oh, yeah, so
There you
wherever
go.
that fits in. But not a separate meeting, but as an agenda for
Yep.
a light agenda. Regular meeting.
We can do that.
Okay. Shifting, there's any other comment? Okay, shifting now to item E, Commissioner reports. Individual commissioner reports. Would any commissioner like to make a short report out on items of interest to the entire commission? Commissioner Cohen, would you like to make a farewell?
Maybe a karaoke rendition of My Way or
That's
something?
right. I think I have to do something in Hawaiian. No, so this was swell. I was thinking about this the other day when I was coming here to pick up stuff. And, I ended up joining the library commission, I think it was 6 years ago. Not with any purpose in mind. I think I just come here enough. I was a familiar face and sort of a heavy user. And they just sort of said, well, you're sort of a heavy user. Maybe you have something to contribute. And I'm like, I can't imagine I have anything to contribute. And I think 6 years I've proven that, but I gave it a go. But I would say that in the time I've been here, it's been sad to see what's happened to other libraries and other communities across the country in terms of efforts to limit access to books and print material in schools and in public libraries. And even activities like, like in the kids section, somebody coming in and reading a book. You know, who they are and how they represent themselves should have nothing to do with it. But in a lot of communities, it apparently matters. Here, we're almost looking for things to do. But in other communities, they have a lot of work to do, in my opinion, to get it back on track to providing what I understand to be the whole purpose of public libraries, which is free and open access to materials, right? So my only recommendation would be to continue to support the freedom of access of print and non-print materials. And because I think as soon as we fail to remember how easy it is and how fortunate we are, the start of us losing those rights and privileges starts to rear its ugly head. So we're very fortunate. This has been a wonderful community, lovely people working here. I'll be rolling off at a time when we were busy at the beginning, 6 years ago, trying to figure out if we were going to take a donation to try to update this library. The choice was to not do that, and miraculously, folks at Meta stepped in and decided to help there. So in the course of this 6-year period, I got to watch the shift in attention and focus go to the other part of town, which is actually very welcome and I think a good thing. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 3 to 6 or 9 years. Clearly there's still work to do. Resources are always going to be an issue, but you've got very dedicated people working here and the staff's terrific. And I'm actually not just rolling off this, I'm leaving the area, as it turns out. It just so happens that they coincide. I'm staying in Northern California, but I'm just going a little bit more north. But I'll make it a point to come back, and I wish you all Godspeed and continued success. And it's been a real pleasure. I've met some lovely, lovely, lovely people as a result of this, and I think we might have actually even done a few good things. I've watched the passing of some lovely people who dedicated a lot of time to this library. One in particular is acknowledged in the little library that's sitting up front. So I got to meet some lovely people I normally would have never had a chance to talk to for whatever reason. So you'll have fun here, you really will. And you might actually even get something accomplished. And there's more opportunity here than I think we were able to fully take advantage of, at least during my period here. In large part because the pandemic kind of got in the way. That you kind of remember that, right? But God willing, there won't be such a thing over the next bunch of years. So maybe with the new library opening and the new community access and a whole sort of opportunity to now see how great a library and resources can be, maybe that'll have a positive influence on fundraising and an ability to do similar things on this side of town. And that would be only a wonderful thing. So anyway, thanks for the chance.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking a guy who takes a lot of stuff out of the library to actually sit on the committee. Hopefully you've learned your lesson. Thank you.
And how about you?
Yeah, great. It's hard to follow Commissioner Cohen, and I have learned a tremendous amount reading through the meetings that I've been able to attend with you, but my story is slightly different. I've been a Menlo Park resident for about 9 years now, and I have 2 young kids who are now 6 and 3. And I will say that when my 6-year-old was born was roughly around the time when we started frequenting the Menlo Park Library. And I will say that during COVID, this library sort of saved our sanity because you were able to adapt very quickly to the electronic reservation system, line up, get books in a safe way. The little libraries around town were, fully stocked with books when we couldn't get them from the library. And both of my kids were also, by the way, alums of MCC, which I can't speak highly enough about it because it was such a great experience, both with the staff and what they were able to do there. My motivation to join the library commission was one, to say, wow, you know, my family took such advantage of the library. I would love to give back and be a part of this because this was truly the savior for, you know, during those dark days of COVID. And it also, for me, was compelling because I come from a public service background. I served at the federal level in the federal government. And, you know, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that civic participation around the country and perhaps even around the world is on the decline, and institutions are on the decline. And so making a difference in a local way at the library as a place to convene and provide open access and free access and kind of fight back against a lot of the negative forces that are occurring across the country. I think the library truly has a role in that. And I think, you know, my tenure here was, I learned a ton. There's a lot that I did not know about under the library's purview. I do think we got slightly distracted with a lot of the Belhaven stuff and what our role actually was and how that unfolded. And so that may have been the unfortunate part, but I will say that I think Nick, Sean, your teams are fantastic. I came to really learn and
The library will
enjoy
be closed.
the briefings on all the different programs and aspects of what is under the library purview. So
Are now locked.
for that, I truly appreciate this opportunity. And I got to meet great co-commissioners that are all here. And so my kids are young, we'll still be coming back. I'll be bothering Nick every time I see him for bookmarks and all that kind of other stuff. But I wish you guys the best of luck. I know, I can tell from the rich discussion that you will have a very fruitful next term and subsequent terms after that. So good luck, and I will be definitely rooting you on in the sidelines.
Awesome.
And with that,
Mm-hmm.
can I get a motion? Do I need a motion?
You don't need a motion. You got the gavel.
One final whack.
It is now 7:50 and I am going to adjourn this meeting. The next meeting is May 22nd at the Belhaven Community Campus. And with public participation in person and by Zoom. So with that, meeting adjourned 7:50.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Good job.
Nicely done.